Hello and welcome back. So this is another Amulet Titan replay video. I assume at this point you're watching the league, so enjoy. This is a hand that's very interesting. So I have the green sources to cast Secure Tribe Scout, and I have a Once Upon a Time which can pick up another land, which can make it so I can turn 3 Titan with that Summoner's Pact. So all in all, I like this hand a lot, and I'm going to keep it. This again showcases the play pattern strength of these two cards right here. Turn 1, Secure Tribe Scout. Turn 2, ramp with him or her. Turn 3, ramp again, use Castle Garenbrig. You have 6 mana now. Very strong play pattern. I think it's something that we're definitely trying to maximize here. The second Once Upon a Time isn't great, but it's a little bit of redundancy. It's kind of nice. I pick up the Simic Growth Chamber just to get a little bit extra land. Use that Misty Rainforest, which sometimes is a forest and sometimes is a breeding pool. Opponent turn 1 Inquisitions me and takes my Summoner's Pact, which makes me thankful I do have this Once Upon a Time here to find another Titan. I cast Explore, pick up an Amulet, and cast it. Cool little thing I can do here because of that Amulet. I'm going to pause here. I can actually flash in the Simic Growth Chamber, untap, get 2 mana, and use Once Upon a Time at the instant speed card that it is. Which means with my opponent casting an Inquisition here, they know I have this Once Upon a Time. They actually know I have the Simic Growth Chamber. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast a Once Upon a Time, either hit a land or a Titan, right? CMC higher than the Inquisition, and kind of counter this Inquisition. Now, if my opponent plays a Swamp Thoughtseize and takes my Titan, I can be pretty far behind, but that isn't what's happened at this moment. So I'm going to just keep playing as if they don't have the Thoughtseize, because it isn't worth playing around something that I don't think my opponent has. I bounce back the Simic Growth Chamber to my hand, and then I'm able to play Titan and attack with Titan right here. Opponent is stuck on 1 land, which is a bit troublesome for them, but is what it is for me. So I'm assuming up against Grixis Death Shadow at this moment. If you look at everything I've seen so far, Polluted Delta, Inquisition, Watery Grave, I'm safe. It's safe for me to say, hey, I'm playing against Grixis Death Shadow here. Obviously, if you've seen the title of the video, you know it's not Grixis Death Shadow. But if everything I've seen here, I'm assuming I'm playing against Grixis Death Shadow. My opponent concedes, probably stuck on the 1 land. So I go to game 2. Again, I've sideboarded as if I'm playing against Grixis Death Shadow. So I look at this hand and I say, not the fastest hand in the world, obviously. If I want Once Upon a Time to hit Scout and Urzusa here, and then I can Pact for Titan if I need to. I have a Baloth to deal with Thoughtseizes to buy me a little bit of time, or to deal really with K-Command, and Reclamation Sage can hit a Damping Sphere if need be. My opponent leads off with Inquisition. I Once Upon a Time in response, because I do need to hit lands and pick up the Misty Rainforest. I have a nice top deck here of Amulet. Of note, my opponent took Reclamation Sage, which to me signaled that they had Damping Sphere, and when they tapped out for a turn 2 artifact, I was very surprised it was Grinding Station and not Reclamation Sage. I remember writing in the chat to my opponent, thought you were Death Shadow. And they wrote back, yep, that's why I conceded when I did. So now I'm looking at this and saying, Baloth does not care about this mill engine here. I'm kind of far behind here. So the only thing I can really think of to get ahead is to just dump my lands in play here. So I packed for an Azusa, and then I just empty my hand. Yes, this loses to like a Fulminator Mage or something like that, but I feel like the only way I can try to get ahead here is to do that. My opponent does Thoughtseize me, knowing I have a Baloth in hand, which I thought was a bit strange, but I think they'd assumed I'd picked up something else. which is safe because my play pattern was suggesting if there was like a Titan there, I was going to be able to Titan that turn. With the bounce trigger on the stack, I pick up the Cavern. It's being a little cheeky there. I was obviously digging for a Titan, and now I'm aware that I'm playing up against Lantern here, which is a little scary. I decide to keep the Cavern in my hand in case I draw a field, so I can get a couple extra triggers there. And Underworld Breach is my opponent's play. And the game will effectively end here, which is really unfortunate because you can see that I put my opponent down to 2 life, was never able to Titan, and still was able to just kind of aggro them out with this Baloth play. Unfortunately, my opponent has this really neat interaction here. They use Underworld Breach, Grinding Station, and a bunch of zero-cost artifacts like Amber and Opal to completely mill themselves while generating mana with this Mox Amber. Thanks to Emry being legendary, they get to float a bunch of blue, and they're going to use that floating blue to play Thassa's Oracle, which basically wins them the game if they have a... which just wins them the game if they have a library with no cards in it. So that is the engine we're seeing here, and my opponent, of course, has the Thassa Oracle in hand, and I die in game 2. So now I'm able to sideboard a little bit more appropriately. Oh, excuse me. Able to sideboard a little bit more appropriately. I don't have things like Baloth, but I definitely am regretting not having like a Force of Vigor in my sideboard. I'm mulling a bunch of useless hands. Just actually see if I can start that over. Oh. Too fast. This one. I'm on the play. I say yes. That hand wasn't great. This hand is terrible. It's got all ramp, and I still need a payoff and a bounce land. So I was looking for 2 things. So let's ship that. Now we're at 5. And I look at this hand and I say, well, if Once Upon a Time hits a bounce land, maybe I can draw lands out and kind of go from there. I get to bottom 2 Titans. So I that's my plan, and I stick with it. If Grafdigger's Cage ends up being good here, I can be rewarded for it. I pick up the bounce land off this Once Upon a Time, and I play the turn 1 Grafdigger's Cage instead of the Scout in case of Inquisition. I'm not close to Titaning anyway unless I get really lucky. So I need to draw lands before Scout's even useful. I need to hope that this Grafdigger's Cage shuts my opponent down. At this point, the play pattern is a lot like Lantern. I'm just going to kind of fly through here. My opponent puts an EE on 1, but instead of blowing up the Grafdigger's Cage here, they make a serious punt and play Emry instead to progress their own game plan. So I'm able to Rex Age that Engineered Explosives to protect my Grafdigger's Cage. And that might be so far the most important point in this game. I pay for my Pact off the Rex Age and just try to put pressure on my opponent, who is at 11 life. From this point on, I'm just playing lands and hoping to top deck something good, which is not easy when your opponent has Codex Shredder and Lantern of Insight in play against you, because they can manipulate the top card of your library. So you can see the clock difference here. I have 7-minute difference here because my opponent has a lot more decisions to make than I do. I'm looking for any way to get ahead here. Beast Within gets gotten rid of. EE gets gotten rid of. I'm going to hold on to this Amulet because I feel like it could be a valuable piece. If my opponent's probably not going to Thoughtseize me anyway. They play the Engineered Explosives again on 1. I play the Amulet, play the Titan, and my opponent makes in my opinion, another little mistake something that could have been a little cheeky is I think I only have 29 cards left in my deck, and I'm feeling like in a pretty good spot. I think they should Grinding Station here with this trigger on the stack, because if they can hit the Boros Garrison, they can, you know what I mean? They can try to knock me off of attacking this turn. Like that's like Boros and Gemstone, but it could knock me off attacking right here. So I go Boros, Field the Dead. Vesuva, copy Boros, and now I have enough mana for lethal here because I hid that amulet. My opponent wasn't aware, and because they again tapped out with the EE, they weren't ready. So again, I think my opponent should have used a Grinding Station to make me mill, because if they'd milled the Sunhome, I think that was their only out at that particular point, but instead they're just dead. So that was the match. Very interesting, very interesting how the match worked out. Opponent had to shuffle away their Lantern there. I know I'm kind of fast, but this is a long match, and I don't want to bore you two with like a 30-minute match against, or 30-minute like game or whatever against Lantern. A key point was when I had a Titan on top, an opponent had to Lantern shuffle my deck, which lost them the vision they had of my future draws, so I was able to hide having that amulet from them, which was able to set me up that lethal line. Like if I'd put amulet in play, no way my opponent would have not just sacrificed the EE that they picked up off of, what was that card? The other amulet piece. No way they would definitely have sacrificed it to get that value, but instead I was able to kind of conceal that from my opponent and sneak out that win. So that was game 2. Hope you like it. Thanks. See you in the next one.